I'm going to ask you in a question first, in English first. So today we are here in Madame Tussauds Wax Museum for a special occasion to unveil the first Pakistani figure to be honored to be presented at the museum. I can only imagine it's a special occasion, especially for you, being your late mother. So what does this mean for Pakistan and for you personally?
Thank you so much for having me, and I'm very grateful to Madame Tussauds here in the UAE, who have today unveiled the wax statue of Shaheed Mohtarama Benazir Bhutto, and it is a symbol, I think, for Muslims, for Pakistanis, especially for women, who she fought her entire life for. She was a symbol for democracy and for freedom. But we have a special connection to Dubai because my mother spent 10 years of her life here in the UAE. We went to school here in Dubai, and so it really means a lot to us that today her legacy is being remembered here at Madame Tussauds.
It's an emotional moment.
I'm sure,
was it?
absolutely.
Yeah, that's good. But what strikes me, it's decades and years later, still there is in Pakistan this fragility in political system in democracy. In your opinion, what's need to be done to reach like the political stability?
So I think that it's unfortunate, whether it's Pakistan or across the world today, we're seeing the rise of populism and hate-fueled, divisive politics. And it's important to have politicians and political figures who call for reconciliation and who call for unity and who call for consensus and who can agree to disagree where one has to agree to disagree, but also be committed to finding mutual ground where we can agree to get things done. Ultimately, Pakistan is a big country with more than 200 million people, where 65% of our population are under the age of 35. We have a lot of potential to unlock, but until we focus on unity and trying to get things done together, then we'll fall prey or victim to divisive politics that has resulted in the paralysis of governance wherever this phenomenon of populist politics has manifested recently.
So it's not only a case of Pakistan,
of course,
but also in addition to the political challenges in Pakistan, there's also this economic crisis. So you reached recently a deal or agreement with the IMF bailout. Are you optimistic, especially with the emerging crisis and challenges around the world?
So I think that countries like Pakistan, particularly developing countries, have faced a series of shocks that have created challenging economic circumstances. First, we all experienced the COVID pandemic, the once in a 100-year pandemic together, which was the brutal shocks to economies across the world, to supply chains. And we've seen that manifest in the form of inflation. In addition to that, we had the fall of Kabul, which not only had security consequences for Pakistan, but also economic consequences for Pakistan. Then shortly after that, we saw the Ukrainian-Russian conflict break out, which has had economic consequences for the entire globe. Even recently, with the Black Sea Grain Initiative coming to a halt, we'll see even more of an implication for food security, for inflation, food inflation. And these severe economic shocks, particularly for countries like Pakistan, are very difficult to absorb. Add to that last year we experienced the greatest climate catastrophe that we've ever experienced, with 2/3 of our country underwater after historic flooding. So you're absolutely right to say that Pakistan is facing economic challenges from all fronts. It is a sign, an optimistic sign, that we've managed to reach an agreement with the IMF, and that will provide for economic stability. We're also grateful to our partners such as the UAE, who are looking to invest in Pakistan, who recognize the economic potential of investing in Pakistan, and these sorts of developments does make one optimistic for Pakistan's economy going forward.
Of course, you mentioned a lot of important issues. I'm gonna get back to them, but according to the support of Gulf countries, UAE, KSA, etc., a lot of investments and deposits, as you mentioned. That leads me to ask about the nature of relations between Pakistan and the Gulf countries, the countries of the region, and also its prospects.
So we have historic relations with countries across the Gulf, but because I'm here in the UAE, I'll speak about our relations with the UAE. We have brotherly relations between our two countries, and this is a generational relationship that was started by Sheikh Zayed and is continuing to this day. We have people-to-people contacts between the UAE and Pakistan that spanned 3-4 generations now. And the Pakistani community are hard-working communities, is working here in various sectors and contributing to the economy here. And as you mentioned, we've had investments in the past, and we're optimistic about the economic activity between our two countries going forward. So I'm very satisfied with the pace of Pakistan-UAE relations, and I'm very optimistic about more potential for us to unlock going forward.
Let me get back to the economic crisis, its causes. You mentioned the Ukrainian-Russian conflict, the pandemic, etc. It's an ensemble of causes combined, but you mentioned also the floods and its costs, humanly, economically. So we're talking about climate change. Now we're heading to the COP28. What has Pakistan to bring to the table?
So we're looking forward to COP28 in UAE hosting COP28 to take the conversations from COP27 forward. And the last time when we were part of Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt for COP27, it was right off the heels of our floods in Pakistan, and Pakistan is the chair of G77 plus China, advocated for loss and damages to be added to the agenda, because countries like Pakistan produce 1% of global carbon emissions, but unfortunately are amongst the 10 most climate stressed countries on the planet. So our people, the people of Pakistan, are paying in the form of in the form of the damages from these floods for the actions of far more developed countries. And I believe we made significant progress, and there's a lot of expectations from COP28 that these conversations, these important conversations, will be taken forward. We suffered catastrophic losses as a result of the floods. Funding, given the various economic challenges which not only affect us but are affecting many other countries, has been challenging in that context. But nonetheless, I'm proud of some of the initiatives and some of the progress that we've made in reconstruction for the flood victims. For example, in my home province of Sindh, we are not only funding the resilient reconstruction of the houses that were destroyed by the floods, 2 million houses that were destroyed by the floods, but we're also providing the land rights to the women of the household. So not only would they have their own home, but they'll also have their own land, which will now be an asset, and they'll be economically empowered as a result of our reconstruction efforts. We're not only seeing a climate resilient reconstruction, but economically also we're trying to build back these communities that have been affected by this catastrophe.
Yes. Another issue that's concerning the whole world, not just Pakistan, it's like the Black Sea grain export deal.
Absolutely.
You made a lot of contacts and calls with all parties involved in this deal and agreement. So, in bottom line, what's your conclusion? What's the problem? Is there any chance to revive it, or any chance to Pakistan to play a role in it?
Well, I think your question is very important, and the Black Sea grain initiative was very important in the context of global food security. And after this deal has now come to an end, that has implications for the whole world and for global food security, but has an outside impact on developing countries such as Pakistan. And therefore, I've made the effort of raising this issue with various counterparts, with the Ukrainian foreign minister when he visited Pakistan, with my Turkish counterpart, with the EU foreign minister, with the UN Secretary General, with the Secretary of State of the United States, and with the Russian foreign minister, and to try and bring Pakistan and Pakistan's, but also the developing world's perspective to them, that we hope and we urge there to be a diplomatic solution that could result in the revival of this initiative after hearing the concern of all sides, which would be a positive development for global food security. The least developed countries, the poorest of the poor, the most affected when supply chains are disrupted like this.
But talking about the conflict in general, or the war, where Pakistan is truly and really standing, because Pakistan says it's neutral, but if I'm going to be honest with you, there's reports that Pakistan is supplying some weapons to Ukraine through third parties, but at the same time is buying Russian oil with Chinese currency, which is like a big change from this dollar-dominated payments, foreign payments from Pakistan. So
as far as this conflict is concerned at the United Nations, we've maintained a consistent non-partisan approach where we have not we have abstained from voting on all of the resolutions at the United Nations, and continue to call for a ceasefire and meaningful dialogue and sort of the pursuit of peace through diplomacy. That is Pakistan's position, because as a developing country, as we've touched on one, but there are many ways in which such conflicts have an outsized impact on developing countries. But two, we've also just had the experience of Afghanistan in our neighborhood. The people of Pakistan are tired and exhausted of war, and this is not the time for war. As I've just recounted for you, we had the COVID pandemic that affected the entire planet. We have climate catastrophes happening to us, but happening to every other country on a regular basis. And this is the time for us to come together and find solutions, not to be fighting such conflicts. So that indeed is Pakistan's position at the United Nations. As far as these accusations are concerned about supplying weapons to Ukraine, you would have seen when the Ukrainian foreign minister was in Pakistan, we both addressed this topic and clarified at the press stakeout after his meeting in Pakistan. And as far as our procurement of the Russian oil, we're doing whatever we can to try and meet the not only the food insecurity that I mentioned to you, but also the energy insecurity that our people are facing. And as a result of this conflict, we've seen the price of not only food, but also energy go up for people across the world. So all governments are doing what they can, particularly those who are not directly involved in the conflict, to provide a relief to their people.
You said this is not time for war or conflicts. How about India, Pakistan? Last May you made like a rare visit to India within Shanghai summit. It led to nowhere, obviously. So is there any hope or chance to a settlement track or talk track?
So I think what
India?
my visit to the SCO demonstrates is that Pakistan has never shied away from its responsibilities within the international framework, with the multilateral framework. And it is up to India to demonstrate that they are willing to engage productively in peace talks, which is not something that we see. After their unilateral actions in Jammu and Kashmir, in occupied Kashmir in 2019, that they violated United Nations Security Council resolutions and international law, it's made it very difficult to have a productive engagement with India, and it would be important for them to address that concern so that we can sit together and ensure peace within our region.
Isn't there a new reality in the field on the ground after the 2019 law changes in India?
No, because you can sit at your home and draw as many lines as you want on your own map, but the United Nations Security Council recognizes Kashmir as a disputed territory and provides for a path for that solution through a plebiscite of the people of Kashmir deciding their own future. And as India is the largest democracy in the world, they shouldn't be scared of the opinion of their people. But unfortunately, that's what we're seeing them doing. At the same time, we see the hypocrisy of the rest of the world, who continue to insist that international law and United Nations Security Council resolutions are sacrosanct when it comes to the context of Ukraine, but forget about them when it comes to the issue of Palestine or Kashmir.
But unlike India, you have excellent relations with China. Is it like both because combined of this competition or hostility with India that makes this relationship between
our
Pakistan and
relationship
China
with China
perfect?
has nothing to do with our relationship with India. We have a historic relationship with China, an all-weather strategic partnership, and I like to say that although today everybody wants to be friends with China, but at a time when not many people wanted to be friends with China, at that time Pakistan was friends with China. And it is a result of our Pakistan and China's relationship, cooperation, that we even played a role in establishing diplomatic relations between the United States and China. And it is exactly that sort of role, as a bridge builder, as a country that brings countries together, that Pakistan sees itself playing on the world stage, not as some countries in our region prefer to do, is to play a divisive role within our region or in the global context.
But can we say nowadays Pakistan is closer to China than US, especially with Washington's growing interest with India?
I think that Pakistan has always maintained a relationship with both the United States and China, unlike other countries. We have consistently throughout our history been engaged with both these two countries. It is true that just as in domestic politics we see an increased partisanship and polarization, we see that polarization and partisanship reflective in geopolitics on the world stage. But even in that context, Pakistan would like to see itself as a bridge builder and someone who finds mutual ground to work on rather than one that plays off tensions.
You can still make the balance between Washington and Beijing?
I think that, look, I understand that is definitely the role that Pakistan would like to see itself playing. And obviously, there are certain times when the international geopolitical position is rather quite tense, but we always believe that through diplomacy we can find solutions, and that is what our responsibility should be, that in a time when we face such collective challenges, that we seek ways and means to work together.
So with this growing regional and international competition in Asia, it's like there is Pakistan, India, China, US, and with reports that China is increasing its nuclear arsenal. Will this lead to like a nuclear race between the three powers in Asia?
No,
what does it mean?
Look, I think what is unhelpful within our region is any one country being designated a net security provider for other countries far away. And then when that country is provided or facilitated in vastly expanding their military capabilities beyond their own requirements, it obviously has a knock-on effect and will result in other countries in the region also expanding their military capabilities. Again, I don't believe that that's a healthy direction for us to be going in the region, and it would be beneficial if we focused on discussing amongst ourselves and finding a more appropriate way forward.
You still stick with the principle of minimum deterrence?
Look, as far as our nuclear capability is concerned, Pakistan was not the first to build a nuclear weapon, nor was it the first to use a nuclear weapon, but it became absolutely necessary for our survival once India had built a bomb and tested their bomb, for Pakistan to do the same. And we believe the conflict in Ukraine has proved that Pakistan absolutely was right to acquire the nuclear bomb, and Ukraine being the only example of another country that relinquished its nuclear arsenal.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.